So I started this vlog for two reasons. One, I used to make videos where I read around the world and I missed doing that. And two, there were a lot of books by Indian authors that were out this year that I was interested in, as well as several that I had on my shelf. So I thought it would be time to read some Indian authors. This video will be books by authors from the Indian Diaspora. It is a country I've been to, but of course it is such a big country that trying to cover such a complicated place in one video is not going to happen. I'm just reading 4 books and I hope I will enjoy them.
3 of them I have here, and then 1 of them I only have in audiobook. So the one I have in audiobook is Covenant of Water by Abraham Veghese, which is kind of a family saga epic set in Kerala beginning in 1900. And Veghese is an Indian author who was born in Ethiopia and grew up in either the States or Canada, I believe. And then I also want to read Maximum City, Bombay Lost and Found by Suketu Mehta, which is one of the books that's been on my physical TBR for the longest, and it is about Bombay, or Mumbai as it is also known. This is non-fiction, and I wanted to get some non-fiction in here as well. This is about India, part memoir, part journalism, part travelogue. Born in Calcutta, raised in Bombay, and now based in New York. So he is a born and raised Indian author, although he does now live in America. Then another one that I want to read that is also non-fiction is Wanderland by Jinni, and this is about this is nature writing about British nature, but about who has access to British nature, racism of like the conservation movement and like access to nature and things. So it is more about Indian diaspora than about India itself, and also about the British countryside. So quite different from being about Indian urban life. And then the final one that I want to read is Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor, which I got from the library, which is why it is so shiny and reflective. This is one that came out this year, and it has been really hyped, and it's kind of like a crime thriller, really plotty book, political intrigue set in Delhi. So I'm excited to read this one as well. But the first one I'm going to read is Covenant of Water by Abraham Veghese. So, as I said, this is a family saga, and it spans from 1900 to 1977, and it is set in Kerala, which is in the southern tip of India, and is famous for its waterways. And it is about a family where one person at least from each generation drowns, which obviously when you're living in Kerala, which is on the sea and also like famous for waterways, as I said, backwaters and rivers and lakes and things, and like traveling by water, it's quite a dangerous curse to have on a family. And it starts with one young girl who is 12 years old, who is sent off to marry her new husband, who is 40 years old, and this marriage has been arranged between them, and it follows her becoming the matriarch of this family where someone drowns. I've heard really great things about it, so I am looking forward to getting to read it. Halfway through The Covenant of Water by Abraham Veghese, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm not loving it, I think is how I would describe it. If you love a family saga and like a bit of history, a bit of 20th century history in your family saga, like Pachinko, but this time India instead of South Korea, I think you would really enjoy this. I think it's doing that thing where it explores one character in depth, and then we travel through time in their perspective, and then we see how people intersect, and it does kind of jump about in time a little bit. Like it gives you a date at the beginning of each chapter, so you know what time period you're in, and it jumps forward and backward, and you kind of see eventually how all of the things are being interwoven, and it's really just a history of Kerala, of South India through the 20th century, using this family with deep character development and a lot of and relationships and things. So if that's what you're here for, I think you would enjoy it. I think for me, I'm enjoying it, but I wish I was reading it physically rather than listening to the audiobook, which is unusual because for like a big epic family saga book, the audiobook normally really works for me. But this one is read by the author rather than being read by an actor, and I think I would prefer it to be read by an actor because I think that the author is just not it's not his job, especially as there is one character who is Scottish and he cannot do a Scottish accent, which it happens in other books as well, but he's so bad at a Scottish accent he becomes unintelligible, which makes it very hard to listen to the book. So yeah, I'd rather he wasn't doing it. The other issue I have is that as it is trying to talk about the history of Kerala and the history of India in the 20th century, it puts in a lot of historical facts, but they do feel a little inorganic and a bit wedged in there, and I feel like it would be better if they could come up in a more organic way, or if he really wanted to input them in the way that he is, if he had like newsreels or something like that, a different like medium in order to share them, because I think the way that he just sort of suddenly detaches from the narrative to insert this historical perspective is not particularly well done, and it feels a little jarring and disconnected from the novel. I am now currently at the the early 1950s. I'm not sure how, I think it said 70 years and it started in 1900, so I guess we're going to get to 1970, but I've still got 15 hours to go on the audiobook. Hello, so as I have mentioned many times before, my boyfriend is a chef, and he has brought me home a little treat. It is paneer makhani, made by his friend Dinesh, who's also a chef, and is from India. So he's made a paneer makhani, which I am going to have for my lunch at work today, which I'm very excited for. I think paneer makhani is a North Indian dish. It is from Delhi. Age of Vice is also set in Delhi, so perfect, I think. So that's very fitting. Although Dinesh is from Bangalore, I believe. Yes, so I'm going to pack this up to take for lunch and I'll let you know how it is. According to my boyfriend, it's amazing. So look forward to it. It's a really warm, sunny day, so we're going to go to the Lee Valley for a walk.
The Covenant of Water ended up being a good but not great read for me. I think if you liked books like Pachinko and Homegoing, then this book would really be for you. It has the same intergenerational family saga, the same people coming back into a narrative that is epic and follows history, but aren't hugely well developed characters, in my opinion. It is much more focused on plot, but it does also have some wonderful descriptions of place and a lot of history inserted into it. I think that history became a little more integrated later on and less shoehorned in, because our characters started to move out in the world and weren't just in a small village in Kerala. I think for me, the reason it didn't work is that I don't love an intergenerational family saga. I prefer to sit with characters. I also thought it was going to be more magical realist by the talk of this curse and these people drowning, and it turned out to be a lot more realist than I was expecting, and I found the explanation for that to be a little bit trite, a little bit easy, and I didn't think it was particularly an interesting reveal. Abraham Veghese is also a doctor, and so there were a lot of characters who were doctors, and a lot of his expertise in doctoring came in. I think he is very much one for an infodump, and I also think that family sagas are a genre where the infodump is a big part of it. I think that might be for me why it doesn't work. So I enjoyed reading this, it was fine, but I wouldn't be interested in reading it again.
Wanderland, as I said, is nature writing, and it was one that was shortlisted for the Wainwright Prize, which is the UK's biggest nature writing prize, and one that I bought a few years ago in a bookshop in the Lake District, fittingly enough, as that is our first national park here in the UK. Jinni Reddy dares to delve into the Wanderlands of Britain, heading off in search of a magical landscape. A London journalist with multicultural roots and a perennial outsider, and so her family are from, she has an Indian family but from South Africa, and her parents' struggles in apartheid era South Africa are part of this. So it is a kind of a memoir and also nature writing, and I'm intrigued to see if it works for me. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, I don't hugely love memoir, but I keep buying them because people rave about them so much. So we're going to see if this memoir is one that's fitting for me. Morning. I am very, very tired, but I have a robust tea. I've given up tea because I don't think it works with my digestion, but I'm going to see if herbal, non-caffeine teas are any better. And I am halfway through Wanderland by Jinni Reddy. I'm not loving it, I have to say. It's very readable. It reads really fast. So I don't think it would take me more than an hour and a half to finish. So I think I'm just going to finish it anyway, even though I'm not loving it. it's about her wanting to connect with nature and wanting to have this like personal, emotional, almost mystical connection with the land, and trying various different things to achieve that, trying to go to like places that are associated with that and see people who like talk to trees and are shamans and things like that, to try and get a more intimate connection with nature, which is all a bit woo-woo for me. It's not really my style of thing at all. And then also on top of that, I don't think I really like her. Like, I'm sure she's a lovely person, but in terms of the way she writes herself and the way she talks about things, I feel like it's grating and illogical. She talks a lot about not just the woo-woo stuff, and not even that, because like sometimes there's an internal logic in that, but this is outside of that. There is no logic, because she talks about all of this woo-woo stuff and believing in this woo-woo stuff, and then she also talks about how she can't believe in some of it because she's too rational, and she's like, my rational mind is fighting with this. And it's like, but you were literally praising a shaman for 3 pages, and now you've met a different person who talks about a way of connecting with the land in this mystic way, and you're like, no, I'm too rational for this. And it's like, I don't think rationality is your issue here. And yeah, it seems like people are not, she wants to connect with nature and some people are just not doing it the way that she wants, and so she's annoyed with it. Like, there was someone who described Merlin as being like a priest of the land, a spirit of the land, a priest who used land magic or whatever, and this was in the same thing as she'd been praising the shaman for his connection with the land. And so it's like, but she was like, well, you can see why I was having trouble with this. And it's like, I can't see why you specifically are having trouble with this, because stuff you're not having trouble with is very similar. So I don't really get it, where the difference is. And she's very dismissive of law and myth. She's like, I'm not really interested in that. That doesn't really interest me. And perhaps this is why I feel disconnected with the book, because for me, the people's interaction with the world and how people made sense of it through myths and lore is much more interesting to me than some sort of emotional feeling that may or may not happen. She wants these people to teach her how they connect with the old ways and how they connect with stuff, and then when they start talking about their actual beliefs in relation to it, she's like, no, not that. Just let me talk to a tree. I just want to talk to a tree. I don't want to understand why you believe you can talk to a tree. And it feels very dismissive and very rude for the people she's talking to. I thought it would be more about her experience because of the way it had been pitched to me, although that's not from the back of the book. I think that's from other people I've heard talking about it. About her experience being a non-white person exploring nature in Britain, and the sort of feeling of otherness and the like subtle microaggressive racism of the way that is kept to be a very white space. And those things do come up occasionally, her feeling of discomfort with that, but it's definitely not what the book's about. I think I just had a different expectation going in. But yeah, like I said, I will finish it. We'll see if it gets any less annoying. Maximum City, as I said, has been on my TBR for ages and ages. I've actually read the beginning chapter or 2 of this already, but years and years ago, so I definitely will need to reread them for this vlog. It is, as I said at the beginning, journalism, memoir, a history of a city and also what it is like now, travel journalism in that sense, but also about Suketu Mehta and his relationship with Bombay or Mumbai as a city. And I think it's going to be quite a gripping read, and I hope the fact that it's so chunky won't really let me down, because as I said at the beginning, 3 of these books are very chunky, so I'm hoping I will be able to get through them without too much stress. I don't think I've read a book that is the story of a city before, so I'm definitely looking forward to that as a city girl myself, although London is quite different from Bombay. Viewer screen, I don't know what you call it, but it's broken, so I'm just gonna have to trust that I'm in frame for this. I am a little damp, and I am also halfway through Maximum City, Bombay Lost and Found by Suketu Mehta. I'm sorry, I just cycled out, I'm exhausted. But yes, I am halfway through this now. Very journalistic, I would say, I think, is the most notable thing about it. In terms of the style of writing, it is very quite matter-of-fact and quite relentless in terms of there's a lot of story and it skips very quickly from one thing to the next. There's not a lot of space to breathe, which I suppose makes sense for the rhythm of Bombay, but yeah, it feels more like a lot of short things kind of loosely linked together rather than a more coherent narrative, and there's not a lot of our narrator in it, of Suketu Mehta. It's part memoir, but the first chapter was very much him, but now he's talking about Bombay's history. It's much less of his own involvement. He talks about going to meet people and interview them, but he has definitely stepped back, which, as I don't like memoir, I suppose is good for me, but the relentless pace of it and the like matter-of-fact writing, I am struggling to like binge read. It definitely feels like it needs more space because it is just so relentless, and because I feel like it is constructed for shorter bouts of reading. It is a very interesting history of Bombay, but I would say it has been very dark and very relentless so far. But I've just finished the power section, and so hopefully the next section is pleasure. Hopefully that will be less intense. It's also 20 years old now, this book, and so that is making me reflect a lot when I'm reading it about how outdated it might be now. Like, just for example, in the beginning it said that Bombay was the world's most populous city, which of course it no longer is. And so a lot of the stuff he's talking about the politics and the problems of Bombay, I wonder how relevant they are today, or how they continue to be or not. And of course, it was published 10 years before Modi got into power, and it's talking about Muslim-Hindu relations related to the riots in the 90s and the bombings in the 90s in Bombay, because it is very much focused there. But obviously it would be interesting to read an update and see how that has changed with the Hindu nationalists in power. Yeah, and as it was written 10 years ago, there is some language that is dated as well. I would note he uses the word handicapped instead of disabled a lot of the time, and there is also some sort of casual misogyny that I don't think would slide now, but it is casual enough to feel like it's just of the time, and so it's a little jarring, but not super jarring. I think that his politics is definitely leans towards a sort of Fukuyama neoliberal end of history kind of feeling, and so I do wonder how, again, he would react. He has reacted here, how this book would be different, considering the complete like refusal of that politics, the end of history stuff anyway, how he would talk about this now compared to how he talked about it 20 years ago. So, I think I mentioned before in this video that I have never been to Mumbai, but I have heard that there is this sandwich that is quite popularly eaten in Mumbai, so I'm going to make it now. It's called, I don't know what it's called, I can't remember if it's got a specific name, but it is basically a triple layer cheese toastie with veggies in, various different veggies, potatoes, onions, tomatoes, and also this green chutney that I have made, which is like herbs and ginger and garlic and garam masala, etc. And it is kind of like the Indian version of salsa verde, that kind of thing. So it's got chilies in it as well, so it's a little bit spicy, but I think my chili wasn't very spicy because this is not spicy. But I'm gonna make that cheese toastie and tell you my thoughts of Maximum City, Bombay Lost and Found. This was perhaps the most disappointing read in this vlog. I know I DNF'd Wanderland, but I have realised recently that nature writing isn't really for me, and so it wasn't a huge surprise. Whereas this book was really, really well reviewed. There's even a quote from Salman Rushdie on the front cover. But for me, I just found it so relentlessly boring. It was really a slog to get through, which is amazing to me considering the topic. The things that he is writing about are so interesting. He's definitely writing about the darker side of Bombay. The first half of the book is about organised crime, and then it moves on to sex work and then Bollywood, but it's very much about how Bollywood is linked to organised crime. And you would think that that would be really interesting, and there would be lots of colourful characters, a kind of brightness and aliveness to the city, but he managed to write it in the most dreary way possible. And we drove here and we went to this hotel and then we went up to the room and it looked like this, and instead of building an atmosphere, it just read like an itinerary. It didn't add any levity or any brightness to that. There was not much of a sense of humour to this book. And obviously you're talking about poverty, you're talking about systemic class struggle, you're talking about violence and gendered violence, especially when he talks so much about like the passion of Bombay and the like get up and go that you have to survive in Bombay, the kind of drive and the persistence, and yet he wrote it like he was half asleep. The substance worked well for me, but the style ruined it. Okay, I will try my sandwich. I gave my boyfriend the one that was a little more sticking together. I've given myself the one that falls apart a bit. It's a nice toasty. Yeah, it's really good. Maybe could have used a little sugar, it's a bit on the bitter end. I think it will be very filling. I'll finish this, then I'll wrap up this video. This book has been so hyped. Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor has been one that I've seen absolutely everywhere on Bookstagram, and so I'm really excited to read it. I think it's going to be really plotty and fun. It is about a driver who, at 3 AM, a speeding Mercedes jumps the curb and instantly 5 people are dead. It's a rich man's car, but when it settles, there is no rich man, only a shell-shocked servant. And it is about the wealth disparities in India, and about what happened, the criminal, like, underground, I believe, hit among lavish estates, decadent parties, predatory business tactics, and political manoeuvring. AJ is a watchful servant born into poverty who rises through the Wadir ranks as a trusted fixer. And yes, it says it is crime. So I'm thinking it's going to be a lot of fun, and a very plotty book, which, as you probably know, I don't read huge amounts of, but I'm intrigued to try. Also, it has a map. I can't take this all the way off because it will give you that horrible baggy covers that you get on really well-read library books, which I hate. Oh, I don't think you can see any of that when I was talking through it, but there you go. And also on the back, it has been blurred by Marlon James, who wrote A Brief History of 7 Killings, which is one of the reasons I'm excited to read this, because that is also crime, also kind of thrillery, but very literary, interestingly written, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping this will be like in that vein, although hopefully it won't take me as long to read, because I think that took me like a month and a half. But it is equally chunky. I do have the audiobook though, should I need it. Halfway through Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor, and I'm regretting choosing 3 very chunky books to try and read for this video, because I think I'm definitely going to be behind with it going up, especially because my laptop has also broken, so I'm having editing issues. Regardless, I'm halfway through this book now, and it's definitely a much like plottier read than I am used to reading, but I am, I think, enjoying it. Interestingly written, particularly there are some moments that are written in second person where we are following a certain character, and I really enjoy the way those are written. I really think they are a lot more powerful than the rest of it, because sometimes it seems to stray a little into melodrama, which is something that I always have issues with when I'm reading. The descriptions and things in this are very evocative. I can really see where we are, although because I'm listening to the audiobook, I have a couple of times gotten a bit lost as to where we are. I don't know if that is because of the audiobook. Like, I thought we were in Goa and we were back in Manali. I think it's quite an interesting structure in terms of the novel, because it seems we start with this character AJ, and it seems like he is our central character. We are now, I'm in the middle, we are in with a character who is Neda, that's her name, and so we are following her experience. She is a journalist in Delhi, and she's from a very different background. She is from a like middle class, well-to-do family, and it is very much looking at like class structures in India, and how that affects different people, and also violence in India, gender and violence and class and violence, and it seems like our main character is actually Sunny, who is the son of like a mob boss, and so we are getting to know him through these different perspectives, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think that, as I said, it's very plotty, all the characters are well developed. The only thing is that it is very dark. It is very dark. There is moments of like extreme sexual violence in prison, and of various other times of violence. Like, it starts with someone being sold into slavery, so there is a lot of violence in it, and it's very much a look at poverty and class, which is interesting reading it alongside Maximum City, which also deals with a lot of the same things, like the underbelly. And in that one, he often talks about how this is Mumbai, not Delhi, and so in Mumbai, organised crime is an issue, but the sexual violence and the petty crime is more common in Delhi. So it is an interesting to contrast those two things. I think overall, I'm going to find it an interesting and engaging read, but I haven't fallen in love with it. Okay, so I finished my sandwich. It was a good sandwich. Now let's talk about Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. I think that this book was not for me, really, in terms of the style of it. I enjoyed it. This always happens to me. And so this is a crime book, according to my library, and there is a lot of crime in it, various sorts of crime. And often when I read books like this, I enjoy the setup and I don't enjoy the payoff, and I think that that's what happened here as well. Like, when we weren't quite sure what was going on, and when there was a mystery being set up, when the atmosphere of Delhi in the early 2000s, yeah, I think it's the late 90s and the early 2000s in Delhi, and I enjoyed it setting up the political machinations of this underground world, of this like crime underworld, and there was some beautiful writing, and I thought that the characters were being well developed, and it was interesting. And I was kind of being drawn in to the mystery as we were jumping about these different perspectives, and I enjoyed it. And then the reveals happen and the plot happens, and it just never lives up to that setting. And I am, as you probably are aware if you're watching this channel, not a huge plot reader in general. I don't really need a lot to happen in my books, and I would just rather keep the atmosphere. But obviously, if you're setting up a mystery, you need to, well, you don't even need to, do you? You don't need to figure out the mystery, but I guess a lot of people would be frustrated if you didn't. I was going to say it was really violent and it felt like excessive, but I've read a lot of books with a lot of violence and darkness, like House of Stone by Nobuo Rosa Tsushima, which is about the Mugabe regime in Zimbabwe, and I really enjoyed that book. Perhaps it was that brutality felt like not quite in keeping with the style of the rest of the book. I don't know. And also our main character, Sunny Wadia, I found him to be the most shallow in terms of character development compared to the others. And so when we became more from his perspective, he'd been built up as this kind of mysterious, interesting guy, and that got lost when we were inside his perspective. Definitely a rompy, like, gangster book. If you are into violent, dark, twisty crime thriller books, I think you would enjoy this one. This one definitely has kind of a big, bombastic, all-out feeling to it, which I did enjoy. It's kind of almost campy in a way, parts of this. It's like very dark, but also a little bit campy, which, from what I've read in Maximum City, makes me feel like it's a bit Bollywood in terms of the like style. So I hope you have enjoyed this video of me reading books by Indian authors. It was mostly an excuse to use all this footage of India that I haven't actually used anywhere, and it definitely made me want to revisit the country. There's obviously, it's a subcontinent, it's enormous, there's a lot of it that I haven't seen. I'm no expert by any means about any of this, but I have enjoyed exploring it through both fiction and non-fiction, and trying to explore various different parts from Kerala, Mumbai, Delhi. We've travelled over various different parts, but if you have any books that you would recommend, whether they're from Kashmir or Tamil Nadu or Calcutta, I would love to hear from you. A range of different book suggestions in the comments below. And thank you for watching. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you did like it, and to subscribe. I put out new videos twice a week, so I will see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.